Thanks. Well, let's talk about district grants. First, I've got a couple of items before we get into the slides that have come up here. One thing on Club Runner, what it's good at and what it's not good at. It is good at documenting your grant. So that's what it's good at. It's not good for communication. We don't use it for communication. To the lady's question back here of why can't the whole club look at Club Runner, I would turn it around and say, why don't you have the whole club involved in the grant? And I'll give you an example. I ask people when you set up a community grant that you set up an address group that includes both me and Judy, your club president, your assistant governor, anybody else in the club who's interested in it, and 95% of the emails I get are from one person addressed to me. I don't have time to go back and build the address group for you. I've tried that. I have to look up what area you are, find out who the area governor is, get them included. I know Judy's email. So the point I would make with communication within the club, we use Club Runner as a document retention and archive. It is very good at that. Your grants are auditable by TRF for 5 years. It makes me nervous when we have issues with grants that get reported to TRF, because in today's world, it's easy for them to get on the Club Runner and see what's going on. In the old world, where the records were stored in Bill's garage, it was a little bit harder to get access. So as we talked earlier, you are subject to clawback for 5 years for that money. We want the archive to be a very good picture and narrative of what your club did. Now, to get the rest of the club involved, and I'll get into this in a bit, it's best to do that by email. Let's see. The communication group is important. I was asked to talk about the training year. This is the last of 3 trainings for next Rotary year. The first one was in Lakewood last September, and then October in the NIMO, and then this one. That has been our traditional training year. 3 items, 1 in the US, 1 in Canada, 1 at the DTA. That is changing next year. We're going online. So it'll be a little bit different. And the flying fish in the NIMO is going to be much poorer for my wife not being there. No, let's clarify what year you're talking about. Next year. Next year, it will be online training plus DTA. There will not be a Lakewood or a Nanaimo training. They're gone. And then the year after that, perhaps the DTA training will be optional. We're trying to work our way through this to see what we need to do.
Is that optional for renewal or just for initial training and renewal?
Initial training and renewal after we get through this transition. So one of the things we're trying to do, and Bobby is helping with this, is build up a library of some resources for people to go online and look at that. Now, speaking of online stuff, yes? That's a possibility. Okay. Well, we know when it is next year. Yeah.
So is this, you have to attend both, or you can do online in lieu of DTA?
Once we get through the transition, you will do online in lieu of DTA. But next year to qualify for 18-19. Yes, we're requiring that now. That might change depending on our experience with how the online goes. You know, I've been working up questions. It's really good to find questions to ask you because I have this whole list of errors that people make. So I could turn those around into questions and see if people have gotten that. Online access. I'm not going to be talking about Club Runner this much. We used to have slides in here to show you go here, go there, and it didn't really help much. What I've been building are little 5-minute YouTube things. If you go to YouTube and go to District 5020 grants, I've got 3 of them there now, and I'm intending to build out 3 more. So there's something like a 5-minute one. How do you put in initial grant application? Funding cycle. So you understand, we're different. We, the community grants, are different from the global grants. The global grants are dealing with DDF up here, district designated funds that are held at the foundation. That money is there and it keeps getting carried forward till you spend it. What we have to spend in the community grants is money that comes in during this Rotary year. And the way we get that money is we build a spending plan for the money. We have a 20% contingency we could put in there. So we need 80% applications, if you would, of you saying you're going to do this. That goes into the spending plan. Part of our spending plan is $15,000 for a district ambassadorial scholar. Rotary did away with those. The district has decided to keep the ambassadorial scholar. So there's $15,000. If they get it, Dick writes the check locally. If what our scholarship committee, what John tries to do, is to get them qualified for a global grant, which would be $30,000. And the good part for me is the $15,000 from the district comes from the DDF up here, and I have $15,000 more to do for grants down here. So we have the initial cycle of the applications coming in. We have the possibility that we have money released by the ambassadorial scholar. And then what I started this year is questioning people in December as to whether they're going to be able to complete the grant, because last year we returned $28,000. It went back to DDF, but we did not get to spend it locally because people were hoping they could get it done. And believe it or not, Judy and I have 2 community grant applications that still have not been approved for this year. They say they're going to be able to do it. So I think that's $35,000 that's going back to DDF. Appropriate receipts. Some of the things we learned, there are appropriate receipts, and then there are ones that I no longer consider appropriate. So if you type up on your computer, I received $2,000 to ship a container to, and have it signed by somebody, I think there's more paperwork involved in shipping a container overseas than you typing something up. So I would question that. The question came up about changes in scope of the project, and we've been through that. I guess a good example is SQUIM. Anybody here from SQUIM with the Boys and Girls Club? Yeah. The initial thing, they went in and they had their little dream list of what they wanted to do. Then they brought in a restaurant equipment person and said, you're nuts to get rid of this. You know, these things are valuable on the secondary market. You ought to do this and this. So we wrote up a change in scope in that, got that approved, and moved on with that. One thing else you'll see compared to community or district grants is a lot of our stuff does not necessarily fit into the cubby holes of the details of the 6 areas of focus. So what we use is this definition of humanitarian over on the board behind Sally, and that's also on the website. So with that, let me get working with this. Quickly, clubs must be qualified annually. We've talked about that. The reimbursement is up to $3,500. The club funds it initially up front. That's why you don't need a separate bank account for it, because you're dealing with your own club internal accounting. Not just check writing, we need Rotarian involvement. And this is difficult for some of them, but we really want to see the Rotarians get involved in something, doing something. It's approved districtly, it could be local or international. There's no requirement for a host club. It can be joint with other clubs. We need project MOUs with participating third parties. Our window is going to open mid-May. People asked me, when are we opening this? This is a Judy limitation. Judy has to input all of you into the system before we could turn it on, so it's fair to all of you. And along that line, what all of you need to have to check on is to make sure you have a club MOU on file for next year. Because even if you are qualified personally, if you don't have the club MOU, you cannot get access to that. And if you have a question, send me an email. I could check on your club. Project work is between July 1 and May 1, final report by June 1. And what we're doing there, we have this money for the Rotary year. It is not a global grant. It doesn't carry over. At June 30, money goes away. Dick has to return money to the foundation. And what he returns goes back to our DDF, so we get to keep it, but we don't spend it locally. So in that regard, too, with reporting, start your reporting early and often so that if we have a question, you have a chance to resolve it before the slipper goes away. All processes are internet-based, no paper, it's on ClubRunner. As I said, ClubRunner is very good at archiving the data. I've got those YouTubes to show you how to go through that. The whole other side of the community grant area is you maintaining communication with your club, with your assistant governor, with all the other people who are playing in this environment. If you just do this as the Lone Ranger and something goes sideways, you don't have anybody there along with you. You want to make sure everybody knows where you're going. 2-year process, year 1, getting qualified for the next year, making sure you have the club MOU. You might even have your application and project MOU done. The next Rotary year is the execution year, getting ready to execute it. A little background, 2014-15, we had 46 community grants. I broke down the Washington clubs in terms of local versus international, and the BC clubs. I joke that the BC clubs follow their migration pattern. You can see where they are in the winter when you read their grants. Here's some of the countries we deal with. Here are the ones for 15-16. Same type of thing. We had one multi-club grant. I'll get into that. We started that. And we had a total of 8 canceled and money returned. And primarily because we're getting close to the end of the year and people are hoping that it's going to work and hoping it's going to work, and then they realize in June that it's not going to work. So that's why I'm going out in December to say, can you actually complete this grant this year? Because that gives me time to turn around and get some things done. I've got 4 grant applications sitting there waiting for free money from this year, which probably are going to get, just pushed aside. Some of the local examples that people do. Can you read that, or should I read some of the? So local things, international. The Rachel, remember I had that turned on back there. If you weren't here in the beginning, what Rachel is remote area community health and education something. But it's sitting there on your smartphone. You can pull it up. It's a Wi-Fi signal. They do these in schools. There's K-12 textbooks in there, both in Spanish and English, Wikipedia, Khan Academy, a bunch of other stuff. Some issues in communication. I said ClubRunner is not very good at communication. So When you put in an initial grant, you will get one email from Club Runner that says your grant has been received. From then on, we'll be communicating via email. And this is where I ask you to build an address group. It's much easier for me because I've got 40-some grants now that are trying to close out. And when we turn it on, I'll have about 40-some grants that will be communicating with me. And when you send me an email that says, "Hi, Bob, what's the status of my grant?" without, giving me just your name, no grant number, no year, it's hard for me to sort that out. So use your grant number in the subject line and then create an address group so that we could communicate with everybody. The AGs want to help you, but if they're not involved until something went sideways, they don't have the background. Some transparencies. If we took a poll, pardon me? Assistant governor. For your local area. Area governor. If we took a poll in here, half the people would say there is no possibility you could have a conflict of interest in Rotary, and the other half would say, "You're kidding me." So we've had cases like this, and the problem with it is it sends a bad message both to people in the club and to the community. We had a situation where the president and the president-elect, and these are the two people who signed the MOU, were employees of the beneficiary for the grant. And half of the people would say, "No big deal." The other half would say, "Conflict of interest." But the problem I see with that is, what does it say to the community? It says, if you want to get money from Rotary, what do you have to do? So sort that out. Oh, we've got a case now. Sally will mention it. But our president-elect had to drop out. So the president nominee is coming in next year as a president. So we're having the president and the secretary sign. We just want to have a chain of contact in the club so we have someone to go to. It's always interesting to me, particularly in December when I send out emails and I include the president in it about what's the status of your grant, and I get an email back that says, "What grant?" Reporting, I put in appropriate receipts there, again, just to mention that. And photos. So in the Documents tab, and I'll make up a YouTube on this and show you some that have been very successful. We want to have proof of life photos. If you said the computers got to this school, it would be nice to see the students with the computer, just to verify that that happened. And if you could give them descriptive names, I get a lot of JPEG 05, JPEG that, if you're going through and you're trying to figure out what's going on, it's a little difficult. So the receipts, I have a prop here. You could go to Dollar Tree and get a receipt book for $1. And if you're out at someplace where you can't get a receipt, have them write them up, put their ID number on it or something, have them sign it, just so you have some chain to prove that something happened. In the photos, one that comes to mind where that didn't work, had a grant early on where they took some equipment to a third world country, and the Rotarians were going down to build sheds to protect the equipment from the weather. Well, they had the receipts for the equipment. They had no receipts for the lumber. They had no pictures of anything completed. They had no pictures of the Rotarians even being in country. I said, "Do you have something from the airport or a bar?" Nothing. Now, in today's world, there's probably about 10 cell phone pictures that have been taken in here today. It's not credible. Memorandums of Understanding, there are two of them. The first one is a club MOU. What the club MOU is an extension of the district's MOU that we have with the Rotary Foundation. And in that, we're accepting responsibility for the care and feeding of the foundation money and accounting for it. This is where you are accepting it. And the MOU covers both districts and global grants. We need one each Rotary year because things change. You know, one of the big changes this year is the simple school and the low-cost shelters. Yes, sir.
Where is the format for the club MOU retained? Where do you go to find it?
On Club Runner. And I think we have it both outside of the grant module and inside the grant module.
That's the district website?
The district website on Club Runner. So when you're dealing with the grants, there are two pieces to Club Runner. One is the overall public website. And if you go under Foundation and Grants, you'll see the Club MOU for 17-18 there. If you can get into the grant module, it's under the district grant documents on the left-hand side of the grant module. Or if you have a question, send me an email and I'll send you a copy. Yeah.
Are you going to be giving us a thumb drive of all this kind of information this year?
No. No, we stopped the thumb drives. I know. It just, yes.
So we'll have access to the grant module after our names are uploaded after this training is over.
Right. Judy?
I will have you all answered by the end of this week, as long as I can read your handwriting. Okay, that is sometimes an issue for those of you that pre-registered. I have you printed out so I can read it. But I just noticed there's a couple of you that have signed in. It's a little empty.
It sounds like you referenced that we need to have our club,
I will have you in by Friday, don't worry.
our club to district MOU in place also before we can access the
Yes.
module. And that needs to be renewed each year.
It needs to be renewed each year. If you do not have it, what we're looking for is the president for next year and next year's president-elect to sign it and send the signature page to Judy. Judy uploads it to Club Runner. We hit the radio button that says MOU received. Your line turns green, and now you have access. If you don't have that, you might be trained, but you don't have access.
So those are the two things you need to get access to the
Yes. Now, the second MOU is the project MOU, and this is between the club and the project beneficiary, any other Rotary clubs that you have playing in this, any supporting organizations or any NGOs. And the reason we want the beneficiary there is for them to acknowledge that they agreed to do this. You know, I'm working one now where they can't get an MOU out of the school district to agree to this grant. But we're not going to spend or approve spending the money for a grant if the school district doesn't want to sign something that says, one, we permit you to do that. Second, we realize that your responsibility ends once the project is done. And third, we assume the responsibility to maintain it. So if they can't sign that, you know, we're kind of stuck in square one. So they're the two MOUs. Now, where is the project MOU located? The project MOU is in the Word document that is a template for the application. So there's 5 or 6 questions, I can't remember, that you have to answer in the application. And again, going back to club communication, one of the reasons that Word document is there is because your beneficiary does not have access to Club Runner. Your cooperating organizations or other Rotary clubs don't have access to it. So now you have a document that you could work back and forth and refine what your application is and your budget, and it also has attached to it at the end of it the project MOU. And that's located both outside the grant module and inside the grant module. Yes.
Is this only for, is this district grants as well as?
This club, no, this club memorandum is only for district community grants. I'm sorry, the project MOU. Project. The club MOU is for both.
I know. Okay. So if you have a beneficiary that are girls in school, how do you get them to sign? I mean, is that a requirement?
Well, is there an organization that represents them? Are you doing this through the school?
Rotary Club.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so we just want acknowledgement that, one, they agree to it. Secondly, they agree that we're not responsible after we complete it. And third, they'll maintain it. The number one reason given worldwide for failed Rotary projects, when you go to the beneficiary and say, why is this broken? Their answer is Rotary never came back to fix it. So we want them to assume responsibility of this. Any other? Yes, sir.
Well, I just want to clear that up, because sometimes the project beneficiaries are, hundreds of people.
Yeah.
And there's no organization that kind of represents them. So what do you do with that?
I'll let Sally talk to that when she does the literacy one, because she had that same case.
Rotary had an organization, the Rotary Community Corps, and this is designed specifically for villages. And that's what I've done in the past, have 9 Rotary Community Corps, and they have charters. And so they are the people I look to, so that would be something you could look at.
Okay. And just to pick up the pace so I get Sally on, this is neither an entitlement nor a gift, because I've got a lot of grants that have come in that said, you know, we want to give our $3,500 to this organization over here because they're doing really well. So it's not something that you're entitled to. It's not a gift to you. It's something you apply for, and we go through the whole process.
Have you ever had a project where it wasn't a grant, it was an investment, things worked out right with the return? How would that be handled?
I'm sorry, a grant?
It was an investment where the goal was to improve the lives of people, but it wasn't a grant where the money just went away. Theoretically, the money could come back. Let's say it was like a microfinance thing.
Okay, back to the people.
Back to Rotary, back to the club, back to.
We haven't done any microfinancing in the community grants. Most of those that I've seen are in the global grants. And I don't, do you bring that up? I'm going to have to check, see if we even have procedures for that. Some things that we've seen in the past that are prohibited, we don't pay for transportation for people into the country. Inter-country transportation we can pay for if it fits, but if you're going to Laos to do something, we're not buying your plane ticket. We're not paying for food or lodging for participants or volunteers, or operating expenses of another organization. There's the definition of humanitarian. It has to be completed within the timelines, and it must involve some Rotarian participation. Identify your partners. I'll defer to Sally on that because she has a good case on that. The budget's in US dollars. The grant software allows you to input amounts in a country currency and it will convert it. It's easier to just use US dollars. Maximum reimbursement is $3,500 US dollars. For the Canadians here, when you get your approval letter for a community grant, it shows the conversion, currency conversion from the Rotary International website for that month. Only Rotary funds are eligible for matching. So if you have someone come in, the Boys and Girls Club wants to throw in $3,000, that's fine. We don't match it. We only match Rotary money. Multiple club program that we did. This was in the Bremerton area. They did 3 food banks. There were 5 clubs participating. Only 1 club needed to be trained. The other clubs participated. They threw money in and they did things. They did publicity. They did some of the manual labor. But we could do that, and that allows you to get up to 10,500, assuming you have at least 3 clubs involved. I'll let Sally talk about the pilot summer program because she has one of those. If you're looking for ideas on My Rotary, this is not Club Runner. There's Rotary Showcase and Rotary Ideas. You can look for ideas, or you could just tell the world about what you did. That's on the YouTube. That's on YouTube. Individual project report. We're looking for Club Rotarians doing something, some work. The best one I've seen so far is the Chief of Police of Squim on his hands and knees scrubbing the floor at the Boys and Girls Club in a closet. Photographs of the completed project, proof of life, the things actually got there, and appropriate receipts. For the individual project report, once you start it, look at what the requirements are. There's a template for the individual project report. Share that with the beneficiaries or cooperating organizations so you can start gathering data and you're not waiting until the end of May and saying, oh, I got to get this in, and you find out that the person you're dealing with is on vacation. Some contact information for us, some up here as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Sally so we can give her about a half hour. Yes?
Where do we go to find these slides?
Send me an email and I'll send them to you. Are they now?
The October 2016 training slides are on
Okay. So they're there, or if you want the most current one, send me an email, or if you have a question, call. Can we get a copy of the power? Yeah. Okay. I remember the question. Sally. Yeah.
Go. Go ahead while I get this on here.
I'll catch you on a break, okay? No, that's okay. I'll catch you on a break.
Okay. Okay.
You wired together?
I'm wired. I'm wired.
Okay.
Uh-oh.